When we get things like Dendro or new artifact sets, existing characters get new ways to be able to be built. New characters often end up needing older artifact sets, and if we don't have a set lying around waiting for them, that means some characters need to share. These are two of the biggest factors that led to many people clamoring for artifact loadouts for years. Last year in August, they acknowledged this, and they said they were working on it. Then half a year later, we got what is now known as the Fast Equip system, which, while not directly called a loadout system by the game itself, they did refer to them kind of as loadouts in the developer discussion where they were initially revealed. Now, the main problem is they're not exactly the loadouts that anyone envisioned or that anyone really wanted. Not that the system is completely worthless like what it appeared to be when they first revealed it. However, it does have its flaws. In my opinion, many flaws. There is still some ways to actually use this thing. Before I get into this more, I just want to say, why does this matter? I want to answer that question because many are likely going to ask, why do you care about this? Well, the main concern here that I have and probably many others do is that this is all we are ever going to get in terms of a artifact loadout system. Regardless of any actualities, it's not an artifact loadout system. They called it that multiple times. So only then remove any mention of that language once it actually went to the live servers of the game, which was probably smart. I mean, that gives me a little hope that maybe they realize this isn't what people wanted and they will improve it. Hopefully. Instead of just patting themselves on the back and saying, this is a job well done. We gave everyone exactly what they wanted. We went above and beyond expectations and the player base is happy. I mean, look at the encounter point system. I still think that system could use some work. It is pretty damn good as it is, and it is better than this artifact loader system it is, but most people just blindly praise it instead of saying, well, you could have added a couple more things and made it a little more rewarding for existing players. And if nobody ever criticizes it, why would they change it? Because to them, it's working, it's great, people are satisfied. Thankfully, I didn't really ever see any praise for this system. In fact, even when I made my first initial video on it, I thought I was going to be one of the only people speaking out against it, but other people in my Discord pointed out that other content creators are doing it as well, so that warms my heart. So with that out of the way, let's go back to why this system is so bad. If you're not familiar with it, now when you go to the artifact screen, there is a button in the bottom right corner that says Fast Equip. Once you click that, you're presented with two options, Quick and Custom. Quick is basically the new player button where the game is just going to make decisions for you and then you click the confirmation to equip the artifacts. Custom is, well, it's just like the name implies. You can customize it. You can be like, I want more energy recharge. I want more elemental mastery. I want energy recharge sands, not an attack. You can go against the recommended or you can follow it. You have quite a bit of freedom in it. That part isn't the problem. They actually made quite a sophisticated system here as far as most people probably had envisioned for an artifact equipping / loadout system. You have the ability to make a pretty well-tailored set here from this. The only problem is this is quite a lot of clicking around menus when, if you know this much about the game to be able to do this in the first place, is probably just quicker to do it the old way. So far in my experiences, it is, and here I will show you on screen. Right now, I'm going to equip Cyno's artifacts to Kaching's using the custom configuration setting. Now first I'll show you that quick configuration is not going to show me what Cyno has equipped. I'm pretty sure quick configuration is always rigged to do unequipped artifacts. That way you're never taking anything from somebody else. Even though that is pretty much exactly what most people wanted a system like this in the first place, to switch artifacts from one character to another when you're using same builds on different characters. So to achieve this with the custom configuration setting, first you're going to have to look for your artifact set in the list here. In this case, Thundering Fury is at the top left, but if you're going off recommended, you're going to be looking through the list, and of course, I'm still adapting to this list. I'm used to the old one. So we got Thundering Fury. Now, I need to put in exactly what is going to force Cyno's gear to show up. If you're anything like me, you probably don't remember exactly what every single one of your characters has equipped. You got a good idea for most. You know, Cyno's a little bit more complicated because you could have attack or EM. Most characters are just going to be one single stat. Then you got things like crit rate, crit damage, circlet. I don't go with strict builds. I go with whatever I have the best pieces for. So in a lot of cases, I'm not going to remember exactly. Then you got to pick priority minor affixes, which, don't get me wrong, choosing the priorities and minor and major, that is a good thing. Then you got to pick secondary minor affixes and hope that that shows the right set of gear, which I am almost entirely confident that this is not going to bring it up, and it hasn't. That is not exactly what my Cyno has. I did manage to get most of the pieces, but clearly I probably messed up on what kind of circlet my Cyno has. Pretty understandable in my case, and you can go through the alternatives here and try to look for it, but for whatever reason, Sino Circlet isn't showing up there, probably because it has the opposite crit that I chose, crit damage in this case. So I can back out of that, come back into the system, and it will still keep what I had, except this time I can change the crit rate out for crit damage, and then hopefully that would get Sino's actual circlet he has equipped to show up. But clearly that did not happen, probably because the minor fixes on my actual Sino Circlet aren't lining up with what I set my priorities as. Now I will say that using this system for this purpose is likely not what it was intended for, but given this is probably a good example of what most people wanted a system like this for, I think it is important to judge it exactly for how it can do this. Since if it can't do this, it is not a job well done, and they have completely failed in their task of meeting the community's needs. Now this is where the alternative system comes in, where you can manually override and bam. Now I now have my Sino set that I can say equip it on Kaching. The main problem with this system is that there is no way to save this. At least not in the sense that you can have multiple in like a drop down menu and freely switch between them. For example, if I equip all my stuff back onto Sino and come back to Kaching, yes, this does persist even through logging out of the game or closing it, whatever. It will remember exactly what I had saved for each individual character. For example, I can come over to here to Kuki, set up her thing to try to take her EM set back from Raiden, who is currently using it, although it is going to take a little bit of customization, just as the last one did. Then I can come back over to Kachang, go to her fast equip, go to custom, and there is the same one I used to get Sino's loadout. It does save it, even though it doesn't explicitly tell you it's doing it, and the one downside is there's no way to save this criteria, that way you can use multiple. So if I want to come over here and do the exact same thing I just did for Kuki but on Raiden Shogun instead, I can do that. The only problem is if I ever want to say switch back to DPS Raiden, who uses a mostly emblem set for crit stats, there's no way to have both of these, which that's exactly where the main problem with the system comes in. It's really good for the exact purpose I've been showing on screen, switching one set from basically two different characters, which is one of the big things we wanted. Granted, it is in what I would call an extremely cumbersome way. You do have to click through a lot of different things to get to the end result you want, and then you still have to manually switch things out, where you could have just had a save button on the artifact screen that saves your currently 5 equipped artifacts as a set into a drop-down menu where you could have as many as you wanted. That's the dream. I would have been happy with even 2 or 3. It also would have been nice to include weapons in some way. I know it isn't tied to the artifact system, but it is part of a character's overall loadout. I can change my Noelle to be able to equip Ito's Husk set, but then I also gotta go switch the weapon back and forth every single time because I'm not just gonna have 2 leveled red horns. So while this system does fix one problem of being able to switch one set around multiple different characters, yet in a little bit of an annoying way, it doesn't solve every problem. And I think they could have made this experience a little bit smoother to get the result that we ultimately wanted. It's honestly baffling to me that they never mention the fact that it does kind of like soft save your criteria. That way you can actually use it as a fast equip system and a soft loadout, but it's not perfect. And I guess the one good thing is they never actually received a lot of like serious negative pushback because it's a really small amount of the community that wants this. Yet I gotta imagine that a good chunk of the player base has probably found themselves wanting a feature like this at some point in time, especially after Dendra was released. So many characters started switching to EM builds or building themselves entirely differently to support a team based around Dendra reactions. Raiden is a good example. I have a C2 Raiden that most people would have loved to have back in the day, and now I want basically nothing but to use her as just an EM Hyperbloom character. Yet there are still times, many times, that I've wanted to go back and use DPS Raiden as I used to use, but because I am just, the goblins in my brain don't let me want to switch characters' artifacts stuff around because it's a pain in the ass. And then I forget I did that, and then I go use them in the way that I normally use them, which in this case would be EM Raiden. She's doing no damage, her Hyperblooms are doing nothing. It is just annoying, and I usually just avoid it altogether. Long story short, give us some save slots, link weapons to them somehow, or just add weapons into the screen, and really, you got a pretty good system on your hands. The base is there. It might be a little fancier than it needed to be, but oh well. The tools are here. Make it better. In any case, thank you for watching. Thank you to my members of my patrons for supporting me as always, and I'll see you in the next one.
Attaboy!